Welcome. This is Josh, integrating presence, and Wendy Nash is back again with me. Wendy, what's up?
Well, just before you came on air, I
Mm.
got half an hour ago, I got an email from my accountant. It's tax time. And she
Uh,
said, here are the queries that we have. You need to send this more information. And I went, and I tried to get everything done. And I just need to get that one little thing done and I'll do it after the show. Yes.
yeah, I know how frustrating that is because I had to file an extension for my taxes, and I finally got that done. Excuse me, and what a relief that is to finally get that done. I know what it's like to have that last little piece and then just like want to get it done. So you have that to look forward to after this.
Do
Wow, my
you
voice is. Go ahead.
husky, husky. So
I'm just waking up here, I guess.
so I'm here on Gubby Gubby country in
Mm.
Queensland, in Caboolture, and I wanted to know whether in Australia, everybody has to submit a tax return every year.
Mm.
I don't know if that's the case in the US.
I mean, basically, if you're alive, you need to pay taxes. You know, I think it's if you owe taxes, then you need to file them and pay them. There are instances where you don't. Like for me, I'm a unique case right now because I'm not making enough money what I'm doing now to making a living from it. However, because I have a business, quote unquote, or actually technical business, I have to file. So I have to spend all this time, all my time collecting everything that I've done, with my website, with online, with training, and I have to report it all. Even though I don't owe any money, I still have to. And then I don't want to do this, so I pay someone. Luckily, I have someone that's fairly affordable to compile all the proper tax forms. I mean, it's enough for me just to go through, gather all the information and
Yeah.
submit it to them and kind of have it worked out so where they're not spending so much time and understand all the different things to report. So to me, it's kind of ridiculous. But and then the Danish tax system it's really unique. It's really complex, but I think it's really efficient too. So I don't know enough about it to speak too much about that. But they say what the death and taxes are the only certainties in life, really. Kind of a cliche, but yeah.
Well, in Australia, most
Mm,
people you have an accountant, and they
mm,
find you've done research, and it's like you use an accountant and you actually get a better return. So
mm,
most people use an accountant. In
sure.
Australia, everybody has
Mm,
to submit a tax return, except it might not be for people with disabilities.
mm, mm.
So we have some responses here. Okay, Gamers team has says, "Hi bro, how are you?"
I've seen
Well,
that, yeah.
even there's yeah, bro gal. So yes,
Brah, yeah,
bro. That sounds vaguely
actually
inappropriate.
I know. I mean, this is guys talk to each other, not really appropriate here. But anyway, hey, if the spirit's good, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Melissa Reed chimed in, I think, on the last one. She said she enjoyed it. And we made some good points. Looking forward to the next one. So that's
Great.
cool. So let's jump into it here. And taxes or no taxes. And I'm pretty sure in Denmark the scat, the Danish tat, which is interesting because they also call their loved ones scat, but it's also the name of the tax system, which I think is brilliant,
Skatte.
by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Same in
it's
Sweden.
it's it's I think it's pretty much everybody can just go online and do it themselves unless it's really complex. So it's kind of the same way in America. If you don't have too much, I mean, if you're just an employee, you have one tax form, I think, and not a very complicated finances, then it is fairly simple and you can do it yourself. But I mean, a lot of people do opt to have either a full professional accountant or like me, I have it's almost like a financial advisor and a tax filer. So it's not a full blown CPA certified public accountant. That's really kind of hardcore, but you know that you're going to get kind of. But yeah, so this is somewhere in between. And then you could just actually have a friend who really likes numbers and know what they're doing, help you out and file it for you, I guess. Yeah.
Hey, we've got some responses here.
Yes,
So
Mrs.
in
Reed is
Australia,
here.
apparently we have an extraordinary number of deductions that you can claim. So our
Uh-huh.
tax system is really uh, um, overly generous. And yeah, there's a lot of conversation about that at the moment.
Sure,
But
sure.
yes, we have some comments. So Zoom2944 says hello. Hello back. Gamers team replied, "You are girl." So at least we know it's a person now, not a
Well,
bot, which is always nice.
interesting English, by the way, though. You are girl. Okay. All right.
Well, you don't know where people come from. You know what it's
That's
like.
right.
You don't speak your Danish is a bit rough and rusty, so there you go.
Well, non-existent basically, but yeah.
There you go. So there you are. Your Danish is the same. And Mrs. Reed is hi Wendy, hi Josh. Well, hello,
Hello.
Mrs. Reed. Lovely to have you here. And post your questions. We will answer them in
Yes,
real time. So,
exactly.
or any comments. But I love the questions.
It
So
is, and I actually got one the other day when I was doing, a live event on loving kindness, and I can bring that in here too and bounce it off you. Let me read the quick intro I have here. In this 34th installment of the ongoing live series with Wendy Nash inquiring into meditation practice on and off the cushion, we plan to delve into various aspects of metta, loving kindness, ranging from the more commonplace to those that may be not as well known, and the many aspects in between this boundless, immeasurable state. Please join to share whatever you like about metta or just help strengthen your own practice. So this is, I would love to even go on a retreat to just do, in just one second, get the screen bigger here, to just do metta on a retreat. And I've never done one of these to just dedicate an entire retreat. I would love to do that. So the question I got the other day, though, I might as well just jump into that since this is a Q&A, is somebody said basically along the lines, what happens if you're being too passive and people are walking all over you? And yeah, and so this is what I say all the time. I basically say, well, if you're being abused, you have to get out of that situation no matter what. If you stay on the couch or whatever of a friend, but it basically said, no, I'm not that. It's just so then we talked about boundaries, which is what we talked about in the last thing, and actually being assertive. So some people really have a hard time like speaking up or a challenging time speaking up and being assertive. Well, other people are the other way around where they need to dial it down and they come off too harsh. And yeah, but it's for this, the more passive, it's about asserting a boundary and then strengthening it and saying, hey, you need to respect this boundary, or otherwise I can't, take other tactics to reinforce that. Yeah. So how do you view this, Wendy? If someone feels and metta kind of gets a bad rap, a loving kindness thing. Oh, people are going to take advantage of you. That's one of the most common criticisms we hear. I mean, I can respond to that, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
yeah, so boundaries. I always think about it as if you love a child, do you let them eat ice cream every day for every meal? And of course, if you love your child, you're not going to do that. You know that what is the thing, they have to eat vegetables and different grains and meat and all these things to be healthy. So I think that we do know boundaries instinctively when it comes to that. I think sometimes it can be difficult to know how to speak up without being aggressive, or because I think we can be quite anxious about how do we do it, and we bottle it up and bottle it up and bottle it up, and then finally we say something and it all comes out wrong because we haven't said it when it's a tiny little thing. We've said it when it's like kabang. So I think it's a learning curve to experience and to play with. Personally, that's what I think, and I think that it's it's hard sometimes to even know whether you're whether you're in an abusive relationship. So I was in an abusive relationship once, and it took me 10 years to figure out how abusive it was because that it was very subtle. And I thought, "Oh, well, I can't say anything and I'll get put down." It was very subtle abuse. So and it made me understand how do people get into abusive relationships and how difficult it is to get out and how it can be difficult. So I think if you are planning to leave an abusive relationship, I think it's really important to call the hotlines and the support lines. There are people who do amazing things and they will help you do that in a safe way because it's not straightforward. Um, but all that aside, if you're not feeling if you don't know how to respond, you're feeling like taken advantage of. How do you know that? It's not always straightforward. But I think that often what I do is I will sit down and meditate and I will say, and I will kind of bring it to mind, this problem, And I will say to myself internally, inquiring very gently, what am I not seeing about this? Or what needs to be known here? Or what's being overlooked? And I find that that often brings up quite a good awareness. And then I go, oh, that's what's going on. And once I've connected into the emotional, I guess, gate, which is open or merged, I suppose, with the other person. So it's like my shadow is somehow merged with the other person. I can't distinguish who is me and who is them, what is my need, what is their need. And so that often helps reveal, well, this is me and that is them. And then it's very clear and straightforward. I've been teaching a friend of mine boundaries with her kids, and that's not always straightforward, because she came from a quite an aggressive family system, and so she doesn't want to do that, so she feels mean, but we've been working through it. So it's been really fun for her to learn, and the kids are heaps happier for it. So that's what I would say.
You know, this is a really complex topic. You know, human relationships aren't always so straightforward, simple, and easy, right? We know that, and there's so many subtleties involved, so many causes and conditions intertwined, and then the communication side too. So, like you're saying, and if it is somewhat of an abusive relationship, we know that there can be very sophisticated mechanisms of abuse. There's all kinds of things going on, from gaslighting to narcissism, and they don't always have to be on full blast either. They can be very masterful, and they can be very clunky. They can be there not all the time. um, so it is a tough one, and I would like to echo Wendy's thing about going inside, asking that question, and sitting with the answer. I found that so helpful in just about every aspect of my life. So we can do this outside of our regular formal meditation practice, and sometimes it just happens in the formal meditation practice too. So it is tricky too with am I seeing this clearly or not? And then we start doubting ourselves, so that can be really dangerous too. But there also needs to be a check that I'm not also overreacting and being deluded either, because then I can not only get them in trouble but myself in trouble too. I think another tip is having the wisdom and discernment who to tell and when about it, what of our friends and how much to tell them, and then and what not to as well. Because if I'm completely off, then then it might cause more problems than it might get. But if I hesitate, it could be so much easier on both of us, and maybe even other people in our various circles, if I do speak up at the right time to a friend, to get support, to get feedback. So this is why friends are so important. And this aspect of metta, I like the translation of unstoppable friendliness. It is kind of it's a friendliness too. It's a well-wishing. And the other thing I was reflecting on this morning when I was doing this practice is the cultural context that it's in. So metta in Denmark, to me, it looks and feels so, I would say, significantly different than when I remember 20 years ago when I was in San Diego, California, where you have a bunch of just like free-flowing, overt love. Hey, man, oh, it's just so great. Everybody's so, warm and loving and upfront and just uninhibited. But in Denmark, everything, to me, it seems so balanced, straightforward. Like it's like hard to get an point, because it's I don't know. I look at it more of an equanimous equanimity, that everything's really balanced. And it's also, I think, important to point out here that loving kindness isn't the right approach for all situations in life. But the Brahma Viharas, pretty much, I find, are one of the best ways to relate to the world, to just about any relational aspect. It's there's a flavor of one of these four that I find appropriate, even if it's kind of just holding them all together at once. And we can go into more about how, like, each one meets whatever situation we're in. So I just thought these were interesting things to reflect on.
Yeah, so just Ahmed Amir has joined us and says meditation is a form of prayer for Buddhists. So I think that's a statement rather than a question. And I think I'm not really one for prayer, so I don't know what prayer is like for people, but I think it's certainly a wishing. Anyway, I've never really I've not followed that sort of a belief system like that.
Mm.
But am I Buddhist? Yes, I am Buddhist. Josh, I think you are Buddhist too. Is
I
that
I
right?
I may as well be one. I don't think technically, I kinda weasel out of it, but I do, mostly Buddhist practices and study, so I might as well,
There
even though
you
I
go.
don't. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, you're a closet Buddhist. There you are.
pretty much, yeah.
And he says hello exclamation mark. So
Mm.
hello back.
And it's funny, here too, is I also got a question, the other question I got the other day was, is metta kind of a prayer, or is prayer a form of metta? And, and what I said is, well, anyway, did you have anything else to say on what I said before I go into that, Wendy, or
Just about
yeah,
Denmark, I read
yeah.
this week that Denmark does compassion training for children from I think 6 to 14 or something like that every week. It's part of their curriculum, and they have much lower rates of bullying. So I thought that was super interesting, and I thought, oh, well, if I ever run into an education minister, I might just mention that this is something that happens. Because imagine you don't have all those horrible experiences of bullying. Imagine this doesn't happen. So that's great. So Ahmed Amir asks, have you ever read about Islam? I have never read so much about
uh,
Islam. I have friends who are Muslim,
mm,
but I went to their wedding and everything, but it's a theistic religion, and I have never found that Christianity worked for me, so
mm.
I can't see that another Abrahamic religion is going to work for me either. So yeah. So
Now,
Josh, you
yeah,
go.
you said they do a compassion practice. Is that what you said in Denmark? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And, I just I have to kind of agree here. On one hand, one says, well, maybe teachers shouldn't get involved in kind of molding and shaping, forcing people to do certain practices. But then I'm like, no, wait a second. You're forced to do a lot of stuff in school anyway, and I wish I would have had less bullying. I just how it's so awkward to be an adolescent and in school to begin with, and then when you get bullied, luckily I didn't get too much bullied. I had somebody like slam books out of my hand before, and just silliness like this, and throw them on the floor when I was carrying them in the hallway and stuff like that. So I mean, it's just ridiculous stuff like that. It's just like it's just like kind of lose faith in the human race and stuff. And there's a whole psychology to this, but I would have to agree with this. Anything to improve the quality of life that's authentic, and someone wants to do it, and it's just. Basic common human decency. I want to go back to this prayer thing in Islam. I actually lived with a few guys from Tunisia when I was in school. They weren't really, they were, I guess they were technically Muslim, but they weren't practicing or anything like that. You know what I mean? So that's my little familiarity. I haven't actually studied it much. I think I read like, uh, there's one sectarian famous author in a spiritual sense, Kamir. I know I'm blanking on the name now. We
Not
read in the book.
Rumi?
No, well, Rumi is really popular in Buddhist circles too, by the way. And I was just going to say that some of the Sufi teachings I've heard of too. But let me
I think
just is it
that's
go as
mysticism. Yeah, I mean,
it is
it's
Sufi myth.
Islam. It's sort of
Yeah.
it's and I think my understanding is the Rumi texts or have been misinterpreted. I think that's right.
Yes, I've heard that too. Now, I want to say there's this. I love this really short prayer from Shanti Deva. I think this is in the Tibetan tradition, and to me, this is. I just want to read this real quick because it's so lovely, and it speaks to kind of all the Brahma Viharas. And I guess it's technically a prayer, but yeah, usually Buddhists don't pray. And one other thing I wanted to mention is pretty soon I might be able to talk, maybe go on a podcast. There's going to be a huge Buddhist a worldwide prayer time of
Mm.
prayer or something for world peace, and it's not the technical thing, and I think it's more in the Vajrayana, but maybe I'll be able to say more about that. Somebody invited me on to talk about a certain huge worldwide event that may be coming up, and I that's about all I can say now before I know what I really need to say about it. But okay, so this is by Shanti David says, "May I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector of those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. For as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain, until then may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world." And I'm just like, wow. Um,
I think that's advanced practice, Josh.
I think it's beyond advanced practice. And, I don't want to go too much into this, but those on a bodhisattva path who want to stay in this thing, for who knows how ridiculous amounts of long times that are unfathomable, it kind of gives me a fright a little bit. I mean, I can't imagine, I don't know. It's very admirable. And these are very high minded, high hearted things and lovely. I mean, could you imagine if everybody like had that as their operating system around I mean, how much the world would transform. But then again, it's out of reach for most of us. I mean, I look at that and I'm just like, oh, wow, what a lovely sentiment. But how practical is that for me and other people? And, some things don't have to be practical though.
So, so in Tibetan Buddhism, I've studied it a little bit, and the great masters, the great teachers, they say anybody who is studying Buddhism and looking to be, you know, aspiring in that way. So it's not saying, so may I always. It's not saying I must always be. May I always. It's a wish, a desire. And I think we can say, well, I do wish that, and I try really hard to behave like that. But my cat is here and she's whinging and whining at me. And sometimes I'm not always patient. So, you know, I'm human too. So, and I think if you if you don't have joy and lightness and humility, oh gosh, you're a bore. So I think you have to be you just have to be yourself.
This is really important, Wendy. That's a great notion that this is a kind of an aspirational and a practice. It's not a thou shalt not, and you fail if you're not doing it to a certain perfective degree. And yeah, it's a really important part of this metta practice. And yeah, maybe we'll bring in here, these different flavors. And what you talked about there is balancing this out because, yeah, if you do this rejoicing of mudita, the other Brahma Vihara, this is comes more lightheartedness and rejoicing in the happiness part instead of this. Metta is considered a well-wishing too, which I like. It's just this wishing for goodness for yourself and others. And yeah, so, what's the best way to go about that? And I think another aspect that's really important is authenticity, what feels real, and there's some days where it just doesn't feel right. So if we're doing a practice here, oops, I got to pop up on my screen. What's accessible? What feels authentic right now? And some days it can be this notion of, when that meets kind of suffering. And when metta meets suffering, it turns into compassion. And sometimes we can't have, it's just not accessible. So I like a teacher's response with this is, can I have compassion for the fact that I can't have compassion right now? And I love
Yeah.
framing it in a consideration. It doesn't have to be, okay, it either is or isn't. It's like, can I sometime in the future consider maybe perhaps giving it a thought that it might someday be possible, Even like that's a way in.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I think Ahmed, Amir, I'm not sure if you're on the right one, but we're on. This is a Buddhist Q&A, I guess. So happy to answer all your questions about Buddhism. We're not really. I'm not against Islam, but it's not the sort of, I guess, place for it. So just a heads up on that one. There was something there. What was I going to say? You were just saying, and I got distracted by. by that. What were you saying, Josh, a second
Oh,
ago?
well, I said, like a well-wishing and, oh, I if you maybe someday in the future, I could
Oh,
consider.
I know what it was. So one teacher, I don't know if you know her, Jill Shepherd. Do you know Jill? And
Yes, I do. Yeah, I love that there's an Australian, Buddhist teacher, and I really love her down-to-earth practicality and
yeah,
really
yeah,
helpful, especially when it comes to these Brahma-Vihara practices.
yeah, she's often in Australia. She's from New Zealand, but I think she spends a lot of time at
Oh, thanks
various
for yes,
places
yeah, okay,
traveling. Yeah,
she's a Kiwi
yeah.
then, yeah.
And she said one time there was somebody, and he really struggled with metta practice, loving kindness practice, and so he started this thing where it was, may I have the possibility that potentially there could be an opening um, uh, towards a direction of potential suggestion for loving kind, and he had this whole thing, and she said it was like a United Nations document that it had so many caveats in there. So but nonetheless he did it, and he did it for about 3 days, and then he went, oh, this is ridiculous, why don't I just do loving kindness? So I think it's fine to be really hesitant at the beginning, and and yeah, so I think it's good to recognize that this is where you're at, and then kind of, yeah, lose it. So and then just go, yeah, anyway, wake up. I'm not going to be doing it. So
Yeah, just being honest and straightforward with yourself too. And now, I just read the comment in there, and what this brings up for me is, this is a classic antidote to ill will, you know? So, and it's interesting because it can be both a kind of personal practice and an impersonal practice, you know? It can be practiced towards others, ourselves, and actually multiple groups of beings, and it's just a well-wishing, and it's, an antidote to ill will, like I was saying. So the historical Buddha, he didn't really advocate killing anything, other than slaying ill will. So that's not a human or an ideology. This is, energetic reality, right? That when I have ill will, to me, how I kind of define that is a thought or a notion arises in the mind, and I'm aware of it, and it's something where I want to harm someone for some reason whatsoever or no reason whatsoever, and then I consent to that. I say that's okay. Yeah, that's okay for that to be there. So that's what I consider ill will, right? So sometimes these, due to our past actions and things like that, are just different circumstances. These things will arise that I want to, I have ill will in the heart that I want to maybe, see someone suffer or have some kind of harm come to them or something like that. But if there's a choice, then I say, no, I don't want that. That's not me. That's not who I am. I do not consent to that. I do not want that. So that I don't consider ill will. But when consciously say to go along with that, that's okay, then I consider that ill will. That's what I say. So metta, loving kindness, is an antidote to that. So instead of suppressing this energy that some of us have, and I'm sure we've all experienced this in our lives, it can actually turn that energy around on itself and use it to destroy that ill will. You know, and so this, and then I like Thanissara Bhikkhu's practicality about this. What if someone is being abusive towards us? Oh, you're going to be, may you be safe, may you be happy, it just doesn't feel right, right? So what he recommends, and I feel this is kind of, real, is you say, may you come to know the errors of your ways and change, for the benefit of yourself and for the benefit of me and all beings, so it's actually actively acknowledging that what they're doing is harmful and hurtful, and in saying, may you come to wisdom and know of your actions that are being harmful. And another thing is, there's this verse from the Dhammapada that ill will never overcome ill will. Only non-ill will can overcome ill will. This is an ancient and eternal law. And
mhm.
so It's so easy, I think, to have revenge. They did me wrong, and I'm going to do them wrong, and then justify all my actions because of it. But the thing is, it will never end like that. This victimizer going on and on and on, and just justifying actions through anything, through deities, through ideologies, something like that. But if we look into that and feel into this for ourselves, someone has to choose differently and say, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I choose to not do this. And look at the really long view. And that's the only way I see out of, this. Otherwise, it just is self perpetuating cycle for what? You know, if you want well-being and peace, then someone has to choose differently and choose not to do this. And I'll just go into one more quick thing that I love. I find so like a pinnacle of this simile of the saw. If even if a bandit was, this comes from the historical Buddhism, even if a bandit was ripping my arms limb to limb, sawing them, and you do, and I, you, if a bandit was doing it to you, right, and you do not have absolute loving kindness towards them, you've misunderstood my teachings.
Mm.
I mean, if that's actually a possibility, I mean, I don't see how you can really get beyond that. I mean, most of us are obviously so far from that, but it's kind of the spirit of that, what if that was possible? What would the world look like? Even if we just refrain, if even just the whole human race refrained from killing one human being or any human beings in one day, how different the world would look. And we take that for granted, but I know I say this a lot, but that's not everybody. Not everybody on Earth can say that, you know. So
For sure. I
yeah.
was just thinking with hurt. So I came
Mm.
up with this sort of idea a while ago, which is that um, I sort of stepped through, and I can't remember whether you and I have gone through it before, but it's basically you bring to mind an emotional hurt, and then you have an identity that emerges as a result of that, which is something like, I'd never behave like that to someone else. Did we do this before in another one? No. And then, so you might hurt me, and I go, oh, well, I'd never do that to you. And then, and then there's something about, you don't care about me because you show care in this other situation, but you don't show the same care with me. And then you ask yourself, what am I bringing to the table? And w- and then inquiring further, which is, what is your history when you have behaved like this before? So it takes the assumption that you have. And then sometimes you can be, um, you can you can present vulnerability for that person. So there's a way, maybe, yeah. And then also, the next one is, what emotional blind spot are you unconsciously revealing to the other person that they themselves can't acknowledge about themselves? And then, um, noticing the emotional need. Does this person have the capacity to have the emotions in the way that you would like them to have? So there's a bit of a long step there, but um, yeah, it's sort of interesting to think, what am I bringing to the table in this? I found that really helpful, and I've worked with my friend, and she finds it super helpful to go, well, it's actually me who's being really horrible and abusive to my husband. It's actually not my husband who's being abusive to me. This is interesting. But she's going, he does this and he does that. And then I'm going, I'm not sure it's him, actually. I think maybe you're a player in this too. So, yeah.
It's like
But
you said. Mhm, go
yeah,
ahead.
you want it. Our Q&A today is meta, meditation questions. So, are we still on track with that conversation?
I think so. This is, I think any kind of human relationship, meta comes into it. And so in this instance that you're talking about, how we meet another person, what we bring. Ideally, we bring a heart of goodwill. We want the best for ourselves and the other person. But like you're saying, this what's theirs, what's mine? Who's doing what? Who's responsible for what? Did they really do this? Can anyone actually be responsible for how I feel 100%? What's my role in that? What's their role? How do we meet? How do we not really accuse? How do we end these cycles of victimization and being victimized? How do we not victim shame, but how do we not stay in victimhood and use that to justify all kinds of things? And how do we get true empowerment? So, all these wonderful, amazing questions. But when it comes to metta, I feel that's what kind of meets everything in our lives. And then when it meets suffering, then it switches to compassion, right? And when we talk about the good side, when metta meets someone that's having like a lot of good things happen in their life, then that turns to mudita, and we can rejoice. And instead of getting jealous, which is so easy to do, which I fall into of habitual things, and I think maybe a lot of us do. And then I can say, oh no, I can be happy for their happiness. I don't have to be jealous or think that I'm missing out, or why doesn't this happen to me? Why can't I feel good? I don't feel good right now. Why are they feeling good? You know, and so I can be rejoice for their happiness. And this notion of equanimity, sometimes we can't really do anything. There's not much we can do. But what we can care, we don't have to be indifferent. We can say everyone is responsible for their own actions. I can't live their life for them. That what they've, it's not the most appropriate thing to say in certain situations. Say, oh, you did something in your past because, so that's what you're experiencing now. Not really the most skillful thing to say.
Yeah.
But there is a lot to that. When I do intentional action, it's going to have a result. If it's skillful, it tends to have more skillful, and vice versa. So kind of realizing that, but then like when we there's nothing much we can do. I think so. These are as far as I know, the pinnacle of human relations. And it's okay if we're not there. These are practices. These are, we can aspire to these. We can find whatever flavors of these we find helpful and accessible and real and practical.
So, what's your favorite meta practice? Like, how do you practice meta
Yeah.
so that it's actually lands deeply and it
Mm.
changes the way that you are in your relationships with others, with people who are difficult and hurtful? How do you do this?
Well, that's a really good question. I'll just tell you like what I did to my morning practice before I was, of course, this is metta, so it made sense to do a little bit more metta this morning. But actually, my practice has been a little bit more artificial and rote lately, I think. But it's still even that I feel whatever's possible. I would just since I'm more verbal, recite phrases. May all beings everywhere be safe inside and out. May all beings everywhere be happy and joyful, but actually feel whatever's possible here. And the intention is what matters too. Really wanting that as authentically as you can, because I know it's going to benefit myself. I'm the first recipient of all this, right? I'm going to benefit from it. But then when everybody else has the same, they feel safe around me. And, there's really nothing but benefit that can come from it. May all beings be peaceful and calm, or know peace in their heart. May they be healthy and strong, and may they realize awakening and be free. So it's this well wishing. But today, what I have these crows in Europe, and they are in America too, but in Denmark and England especially. Um, they creep me out a little bit. And you watch movies and TV shows, there's usually crows happening when something significant's going to happen to someone. And it's usually not the best, most positive, loving, thing that happens. And so I'm like, okay, I noticed that I have this kind of superstitious preloading thing into this. And how am I going to be with that? So it sounds a little bit ridiculous, but I'm wishing the crows well, even though I kind of felt this kind of I don't know, like dark cloud energy, and but at the same time, there were songbirds singing too, you know? So a lot of times life is a mix of things. How much is in the mind? How much is there something to it? And of course, in this instance, nothing really beyond that has happened. And so that's an example of being more on a remote place like this. But as far as human interactions, I do find this thing, what we bring to the table, is going to affect how we meet someone, is going to condition their response back to us. If it's just really basic common sense in a way. If I'm grumpy, upset, and sour and scowling at someone when I interact with them, there's probably not a good chance that I'm gonna be met with something that's completely the opposite and loving and bright and just, "Oh, oh, hey," 'cause it's our tendency usually is to match the other person's energy. And this is
Sure.
another thing, this, Metta practice, it does informal practice, it builds up this reserve, this reference point. Okay, I know how this feels. I have this feeling now, and I know this energy, and it's getting strong and stable. And now, when I'm mindful in an interaction, if someone meets me with a certain energy, instead of just unconsciously lowering myself to match what they're doing, and because we kind of do that naturally to resonate with someone, to meet them where they're at. Now, it's interesting, but when we do have a choice to meet them where they're at, but also to stay consciously choose not to match their energy, to stay in a more stable ground, um, whatever energy we choose. And that metta I find is really helpful to meet. So I can meet them, be empathetic and know what it is, but then choose to respond with a different type of energy, a more beneficial type of energy for them and myself when I'm being mindful. So that's one of the things when I am that I can find very helpful, because when I go down to someone and match the same type of thing, then I just it's just two people in a world of messiness. And the other thing is to switch to compassion too, is to say, hey, I acknowledge this. I'm not pretending this isn't here. I'm meeting this. This is painful. This sucks. And I want it to, I wish for it to go away and for you to know peace. And I know kind of my limit on what that is, and when I need to withdraw, and then practice kind of compassion for myself, because sometimes it can be too overwhelming. And then what about you, Wendy? How do you?
So it's interesting. I was just thinking of two things. One actually was from yesterday. So I had a meeting, maybe it wasn't yesterday, maybe it was just this morning. And I had a meeting with somebody very senior and um, at council, and my husband also works at council. So I'm an external and I have my community transport group, and he works as a staffer there. And he was talking about his experience about meeting this senior manager who I was meeting, but another time, like a year ago. And he just felt this really unpleasant energy. And so I was talking about it, and we were talking about it, and we go, so how does somebody get to that way? Like, children don't come into the world like that, just watchful and scanning and all the rest. And so we just hypothesized about, I wonder what happened to him as a little boy. You don't know. We sort of both know his physical size and what could have happened, and we just created a story, and we went, oh, maybe that happened, or this happened, or that happened. And suddenly, instead of seeing him as this frustrating person who's XYZ, we just went, he's like this. And suddenly the little boy sort of came alive, and we could understand and engage with him at the human level as a vulnerable person. So it was very interesting. And as soon as we had kind of created this story about him, we went, and it felt resonant. So we weren't skipping over or masking over, maybe he had this, but it was really like, well, what is it that we experience, feeling into that and going, maybe that's what happened. I mean, you just don't know anybody's lives, and he's certainly not going to be telling us. So it was very interesting because his experience and my experience is so completely different because this person is actually very charming with me. So it was just interesting to see that. But my favorite practice that I have been doing for several years now, probably a decade or so now, is just to look for every single thing that someone does that helps me feel at ease, which is um, so so helpful. So, like you're here today with good energy, you're coming with good spirits, and it's a sunny day. You've arranged a lovely backdrop. My accountant contacted me before and said, I can't complete your tax return unless you provide these. And, at some level, I mean, if she was not diligent, then, well, I wouldn't be able to do that. And so that helps me feel at ease. I go, oh, yeah, okay, she's doing a good job. Great, I'll send that back. Very, very clear about, yep, bullet points, this is what I want. So, and that just made it super straightforward. And then this morning, I had a bit of an exchange. I met again, I bumped into a colleague who I haven't seen in a while at a networking thing. And we so hit it off, and she's going to connect me with this person and that person, and then she and I are going to connect. And actually, this morning I had a cup of tea with a friend, and I've been living here for 3.5 years, and I just bumped in because I'm on a bicycle and she's on a bicycle. So we sort of bump into each other. We have, she's married, I'm married, and we have gone out and done things. Lovely, lovely couple. And she said, let's meet and sort of develop our friendship. And she was quite overt about that. It was a really sweet gesture that, well, I don't have any friends. And who has friends these days, Like, really, who has friends that they catch up with anymore? Everyone's sort of on their phone, and you catch up with people maybe going out to dinner or something. But I've moved, and here there's no restaurants to go to, and I don't know that many people. We move a lot. It's you can't go somewhere and where there is a group of people often anymore, because there's no group of people. You try and do something and then it doesn't work, and then that's that. So that people try things and then it falls over because there just is no longer this critical mass to keep the community going. It's all sort of falls. So it was really lovely that she just reached out to me to have, let's have a cup of tea, and came forward with that suggestion. So it was really, really delightful. So these things and really helped me with my day, and yeah.
That's so cool, and going with that, and then working backwards. Yeah, it just reminded me of this aspect of metta and how important it is for friendship too. If we're doing unstoppable friendliness and this kalyana mita, this is a Buddhist term for like spiritual friendship, and how he even said that's the entirety of the path. And Wendy illustrated this so importantly, how this is happening more in a post-COVID world here, post whatever lockdown world. And I do see the same thing. And I mean, it's a little bit different traveling internationally and being in foreign countries and things, but when I was in America after this too, it is challenging to get together in real meet space, as some people call it. But this is where I have to really, I value the few friends that I do have. I really value this. And I have to take well, I don't have to. I mean, sure, they reach out from time to time. But if I really want friendships, I have to take the initiative. And I just done that. And the few relationships that I really value and maintain, I will actively, and it doesn't have to be all the time. And another good sign of friendship I find is I can use a long amount of time and then just get back in touch with them. And it's like no time has passed. The person's not angry or anything. It's like, oh, cool, and just kind of almost pick up. That's a rarity. And so I value it. That's really precious to me. But like I'm going to house sit for friends when I get back, I keep in touch, when I, with certain video calls every once in a while with a few people. And then I make I go through the effort to make arrangements to schedule. I'll just throw out a time. Okay, okay. Well, they invited me over to their house, so I'll actively just set a time and say, hey, we can change it whenever, and just to have something there, we can easily change it. But if I don't throw that out and take the initiative, there's not a lot of incentive for people to actively do that, for you. So that's why kind of take the lead on this for things that I value. But I love these chance encounters too. They're amazing. We have to have opportunity in our life to make these things happen, be open to these things, because
Mm.
some of the most amazing things happen when we least expect it. But then when I'm too rigid in my ways and say, oh no, that's a lovely gesture, but I want to do this and I have this habitual thing to do this and I'm not opening up to do that. But also be understanding that, hey, even though I have a friend here, I'm just rejoicing because he got I have a lot of students now, a meditation teacher, and he just doesn't really have the time to meet up because he's so being so successful right now, which I think is overwhelmingly joyful, and I'm just so glad for him. And I'm actually happy that I can't meet him because he's having so much success, because what he's doing is what I want too for myself and for everyone. So of course I'm just overjoyed. It's a little bit bittersweet, of course, that I'm gonna be a little selfish that I can't meet up with him and talk. But that's okay. I got that chance before, and it's lovely. Now with the guy, and thank you so much for reminding me of this guy. Well, actually, when you say it reminded me of your meta practice of when other people have brought me ease. That is, I was going to bring up the original Metta Sutta and read it again. I read it on a past episode, so maybe I'll link to that. But may you be at ease. Maybe that's the of all the different kind of well wishing in that sutta, that's the one that has the most refrain. May you be at ease. Not a disease, a dis-ease, but at ease. And you hear me, I'm ramped up here. I'm getting enthusiastic, so in brightening. But it can't be stressed how wholesome. And usually I think with the Protestant work ethic, we sometimes confuse this for laziness, or not doing enough or not caring enough. And I think that's another aspect that what we are human beings. We're not human doings. We don't have to do, say, or be any particular way to be worthy and valuable and be here and put a worth on just being, the state of our beingness, not our doingness, not this or that, but just how we are in a natural state, and how much ease and well-being that fosters, and how we don't have to perform or do anything right or get anything wrong or anything like that, or not living up. It's just okay just to have things as they are. That's totally okay. That ease is conducive to some samadhi practice too. And so I thank you for that, because it's so much easier for me to transition into my formal breath meditation when I can recognize, okay, where have someone contributed to ease in my life, and where have I contributed to ease in other people's life? And if nothing comes to mind, then I can wish that for myself. I can wish that for others. And wishing that ease I think qualifies it in some way there, and it helps condition the heart even towards more recognition of that and priming the mind. And my teacher reminded me of this guy, and I think it's kind of a cliche in a way, but it's still so helpful. And actually, it's not putting yourself in someone else's shoes. I need more of this, because my tendency is to be judgmental sometimes, even though, I think it's for, I won't go into justification, but when I just stop and say, okay, what has this person go through? This thing that hurt people. So something has happened. And I like Wendy's way of connecting. She doesn't know, and it's probably not appropriate to go up and say, hey, um, what happened to you where you're such a dickhead? Sorry, you can't, no, that's not helpful, right? But so, but putting yourself in those other people's shoes. And well, I don't, just a reflection on that is kind of more tendency. Wendy has, like, most people connect with the story. So when you create a story like that, I would say maybe the only danger is then starting actually forgetting and then mistaking that that's actually what happened and that's
Yeah.
how he is. Being very careful not to mistake that for what happened. But it really brings the immediacy, right? We hear someone's story, we kind of connect almost immediately with them. We can, oh yeah, now I get it. Now I can understand. So I find that really helpful, interesting technique to do that. Yeah. So it's a beautiful, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I was thinking about, so a couple of weeks ago, the house opposite, new people moved in, And when we moved into this house, we we I mean, I'm very extroverted, so I just go up and I'd say hello to everybody. But there was no kind of help or support. I mean, I guess we're a middle-aged couple, so they thought, oh yeah, well they'll just organize it. There's no help or support. So when the family moved in across the street, they I said, "Here's a tray and with mugs and tea and coffee and milk and sugar and some fruit for the kids and a knife and a chopping board, whatever." And it was just a complete godsend for them. They just loved it. And so when the new people moved in just next to my neighbors that I just mentioned, so they had done a whole lot of renovation works, and the neighbors on the other side, they had been providing food for the guys, the sort of, I think it was the father in the house and then the grandfather, so to speak, and the other guys who were the mates. And so they provided a whole lot of food on the weekends for these guys who otherwise wouldn't eat. And then in the house opposite, when everybody moved in, they got stuff for their kids, and then just opposite me, she did something and I gave them cups of tea and I gave them some fruit and things, and I also gave some tea towels. Tea towels really handy when you move into this, like, oh my goodness. And also toilet paper. Sometimes when we moved in we didn't even get toilet paper. So it's so important to, like, practical things. It doesn't have to be just energetic. I think sometimes we can mistake energetic help for being helpful. But if you're in a flood zone, if you're moving house, but I would say that it would be if you want to build community where you live, you start doing that every time somebody moves in. You take a kettle and some mugs and cake and tea and coffee, whatever, fruit, and you just give them that. And then when they've, say, oh, we'll give it back when you're ready, and so the new people who moved in just like a couple of weeks ago, they said they've never come across anything at all like that. And they've lived in all sorts of different places. So they've bought that house and they just feel, oh, we have made the right decision instantly. They've got, surround sound kindness.
That
Super amazing.
that's so beautiful practice, Wendy. I think, yeah, hygge in Denmark is really, but I guess it's different. I don't know if it'd be out of place to do that or not, but this culture is teaching me more restraint, which I benefit from. But that is, if I would have known that, well, they always say, if everything else fails, try a gift. You can go right off the bat. It just, yeah, it feels like you belong. You're welcome. Everyone. It's a kind of a deep ingrained need that people have, or even if it's not a need, it just feels so kind of welcoming and stable. And you have someone that has made contact with, gone out of their way to make you feel welcome, that could be of a support, and that I can connect with. So yeah, I mean, you can't really say good enough about this. Then we did a show, Compassion in Action, and that's right. Is everything okay? How can I help? Is there anything I can do? These are things, even just offering that sometimes when we almost know that they're going to say, no, no, thank you for all. But anyway, it's just that gesture of offering, but then actually backing it up. If there is something, going to go to whatever makes sense for you to actually do. And I think we don't, yeah, these are complementary. We can do it energetically, but we can do it in real life too. So yeah, what's most needed in the moment, and what do I have available to offer? And being okay with, okay, I really don't have the capacity to offer that now. I might want to and consider it in the future. But even that, I think, counts, is just considering it. Even if I don't feel like I would, that's not my personality style, I wouldn't do that. But just considering it, hey, maybe that's a possibility. Or maybe I can show a similar gesture in a different way, or something like, just feel feel into what feels authentic and helpful, and what you're willing to do. And I think if I can use that practice, that would be great. And I wish there was more of a tea culture in America, but maybe you might just bring like a soft drink, or I don't know what you would bring. Hopefully not junk food or beer or liquor or something, but actually,
You can
yeah.
do something. So it's really just
Yeah.
a kettle. I don't know if people
So
make homemade coffee, like coffee with instant coffee or something like that, but you
y
can take
y
a
yeah,
maybe
it
or
the
mugs, whatever you
mhm.
do to make your coffee, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
But here's another instance.
Mhm.
So, we're about to wrap up in 1 minute, but I'll give you this super short story. My longest standing friend texted me the other day to say that her mum had just died, and her mother's very elderly and been long awaited, so there you go. And I said to her, "People will want to offer to help. So, uh, designate a friend of yours who lives nearby to be the contact person, and you just give that, that person's phone number out, and then that person can be the liaison person to go, how can I help? Because you don't want to have to deal with all this grief and papers and funerals and everything else, and then have to go, and how can I help? You want somebody, you want sort of something useful. So, yeah, that's another way of doing it.
So let me
Anyway,
get that
very smart.
so let me
Yes.
get that, right. So you, when at a funeral, you have a contact person that takes all the people that wanna help, deal with all the offerings that want to help. I think that's really
So
is that
so
right?
she's
Mhm,
just like she's at home, and
mhm,
her friend has died, and her
mhm,
mum has died,
mhm,
but you could say your spouse has died, and you're
mm,
dealing with, having to make
mhm.
all these arrangements, dealing with your own
Yeah,
grief. You've got family members, and you just don't wanna have to deal with other
yeah,
people so much, and
exactly.
so I said, "Designate a friend
Yeah,
to be the contact person." So when somebody says, "How can I help?"
yeah.
You can say, "Jenny, can you contact them and give them some ideas about how they can help?" So,
That's so great, Wendy, because, yeah, my instead of saying, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss," or things like this, I say, "How can I help?" Is there anything you need? Is there any way I
yeah,
can
but the
help?
thing is, the
Yeah,
people are so
I
overwhelmed, it's
know.
too much,
That's
so
brilliant.
you need to
Yeah.
give somebody else that task.
Well,
But
I
we're at
really
time, Josh.
we are. So, thank you for that suggestion too. It seems really helpful. So, may you all out there have the most, optimal loving kindness practice, whatever that means for you, and may it benefit you and all beings everywhere.
Have
So,
fun,
until
be
next time,
well, be
yes,
light and joyful, be kind.
and remember those who promote ease in your life, right? So,
Totally.
all right. Thank you all for joining, and, maybe we'll see you next time.